I'm Maurice McDavid, host of Black, Brown, and Bilingue, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome, folks, to the High Tech Podcast. This is one of your hosts, William Illingworth, joined by your other host, Joshua Swartz. We're here to do the podcast.
We
always do.
Yeah,
we're doing it.
We are here to do the thing that we do on the podcast. I don't know, this is a reoccurring problem on this podcast. We just never have an introduction. I comment on it every time. Usually you comment on, it's fine, we don't really need a system. That's kind of our system at this point. Like, honestly,
exactly.
How much would it blow your mind if I told you this fake intro is actually scripted? Like, we actually do this on purpose every episode. Like, what if this is our scripted system for the High Tech Podcast?
And we practice it so well that we don't even look at our notes to say
don't even notice. Most of you would probably say that's bullcrap, and you're right. It totally is. We didn't script unscriptedness. That would be insanity, and we're also not that smart. So,
it is October 17th as we record this episode. Very excited for actually next episode. Right, I'm gonna preview a little bit now
already. Wow.
I am. I'm doing it. By the way, the episode's over. Let's talk about 124 before we wrap and say our harness tech.
This episode is literally just us promoting the next episode. Welcome to episode 123 of the High Tech Podcast.
And
next week, episode 124, we're actually going to talk to you. Yeah. For those not watching the video, we'll just cover the video. Again, another solid reason of why you should go watch video either on Spotify or YouTube because you see
youtube.com/@hightechpodcast.
Yeah.
Exactly. Episode 124 is our interview with Steve Miletto, which we recorded a month ago.
Yeah, we did forever ago.
We did the intro and outro 2 weeks ago, and it's in all over the place. But either way, Steve's Braves lost to my Phillies. That'll be relevant for the next episode.
You're still gonna hammer that home, huh?
The Phillies are playing not the Braves tonight because we already beat them.
Yeah,
the Phillies are in a 7-game series with the Diamondbacks on our way to the championship. Let's go! Yeah. So
episode out, Will is still talking about sports ball. Like that's.
Look, it's gonna make so much more sense next episode.
When you listen to episode 124, don't worry, it'll make more sense.
When you hear our interview with Steve Miletto, who is the podcast host of Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12. Yes, it's a mouthful. Yes, you can find out why it's called that. It's really kind of funny, kind of cute.
Yeah.
But Steve is one of our fellow hosts on the Education Podcast Network. You can always find that at edupodcastnetwork.com, which is at the beginning of every single one of our episodes because we're in the crew. We're a part of the network. We want to make sure you find the best resources that are available. So, all right, there's my
That's normally the type of spiel we'd give at the end of the episode. But now that you've heard about all the exciting stuff that's going to come in the next episode, let's talk about the stuff we're talking about this episode. That's in between you and that episode right now. Yeah, it's exciting. It's great. It doesn't have as cool of a voice as Steve Miletto, no. But we will, it's such as life, is what it is. So this week on the High Tech Podcast, we are going to talk about sports ball. That's not true. We're not doing that. I will never lead a podcast that does that. I'm sorry.
I'll make you sit through me doing it sometime. I'll just take over for an episode. And
what if a new podcast idea is you talking about sports and it's just me sitting there just saying nothing? Like I'm making faces. Like that's the podcast concept.
There are probably people who would watch that. So why not?
Anyway, this week we are going to talk about our question we really kind of want to dig into is what makes a good educational leader, and we kind of have it say /admin. We'll have a way cooler title by the time you're listening to this episode. But
spoiler alert, it's nothing.
Oh gosh. So
what makes a good educational leader admin?
Yeah. So Will and I we were trying to find a fun topic, maybe a little spicy, one that we could get our feelings out, And we were like, well, what if we talk about from our perspective, what makes a good educational leader /admin? Now, let me clarify Will and I haven't actually clarified with each other what we mean by that, so this is going to be a super interesting episode. Because I'm going to clarify.
Josh, please clarify.
Now, and we're going to see if we're on the same page about it. So when I'm thinking educational leader or admin, I'm thinking somebody in education that has more responsibility than just teaching, right? Okay, so like that would be kind of a simple way. Obviously, all teachers, you're leading in some form. That's not what I'm saying that you're not. Okay, but I'm talking specifically about when I'm talking about educational leader or admin, I'm talking about somebody who has to lead or administrate something in education as well, not just teach, right? I think that's probably the way I'd break it up. Now, it's a very higher ed way of viewing it, probably. But I would say probably a lot of some K-12 friends would agree with that concept that we've talked to. So that's kind of that's my perspective.
K-12 does have like department chairs and program chairs and similar things like that too, like that we've experienced in higher education. But there's also like lead teachers and like there's a ton of different people in K-12 who are teachers plus.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Like teaching mentors, I would probably put in this category too. Like I know in K-12 and higher ed we have that, where like you have a teacher that's mentoring other teachers. I'd put you in a lead admin role of what I'm talking about, because you're not just teaching in class, you have responsibility with other people.
What we don't mean is just the principal or just the president.
Yeah,
that's not what we're trying to shoot for in this episode.
Exactly. Though some of our concepts
will apply
to human beings in those positions.
Gosh, I know you have. I'll just kind of like do a little bit of my resume here, some of my pedigree. I've worked with leaders in higher education who had no business teaching. I've worked with leaders in higher education.
We're gonna get spicy right away.
Who had no business leading. Like it's very real today in education, in higher education. Let me speak more clearly there. Josh and I have connections to K-12, but we've only worked full-time in higher education between the two. I have met faculty, program chairs, department chairs who are just in it because like that's the highest level you could hire that person to be. Does that make sense? Is that a fair way to put that? Like,
yeah, I think so.
I'm trying not to like name names or get specific because it could reveal real people. But
there are people who listen to this podcast. I think I know what you're getting at, right? So like I have seen two different types of people in these positions, and there's many, and we're overgeneralizing and blah blah blah. I know. Yeah. Okay.
Disclaimer.
This is disclaimer. Okay. But we have seen that where you'll see kind of those who are in those positions because they've taught or they've been in education and they've kind of made their way up into those directions for whatever reason, because of their skills and where they're at. And then you have the people who end up being in those positions because that's the promotional route that they've went and they've gotten there. And
here's a safe
there's probably like here's my last note.
Yep,
there's a group of them that have probably never been in the classroom.
Right.
Right. And those who I'd put in that category that you were kind of talking about.
Here's some of the ways it happens. So I'm going to actually refer to Dave, someone we know.
Okay.
But this isn't in any negative, right? Dave actually started working in higher education as a barista. His first full-time job in higher education was running the coffee shop. Over time, Dave eventually resigned. He left that institution to go and do a PhD. Good for him. Great effort. But he left as the director of like disability services, mentoring services, writing services. Like he had risen from barista to director of a large unit of educational services in the institution and supporting it across campuses and locations and all this other stuff. So, I mean, he was a good example of someone who, though, took it seriously, had some educational background, learned along the way, went to conferences, read books. He did the work to get to where he was. And he would even tell me.
I mean, he was teaching by the time he had left.
Yep. Well, he has a background in teaching K-12. He actually had a background in doing that. That's
right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
There's a long story about Dave's life and career. I'd love to have him on the podcast sometime. I've invited him like 3 times. He always turns me down. It's fine. Yeah. Well, he doesn't turn me down. He just It just never happens. Dave, I'm coming
Never
for
happens.
you.
If Dave, if you're listening, that was not passive aggressive at all, but it kind of was. So you should be on the podcast.
No, it was direct. It was I pointed at the camera.
Oh, that's
Dave,
true. Okay, sorry.
get on
If
the
I
pod.
had to cut out, hold on. Here we go. Okay, this is gonna work. Okay, this is Dave. Okay, Dave is Luke. Here you go.
Dave. The hair's not wrong. The hair is pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of that's why I picked it. It's kind of close. You know, I feel like that's a
Now I want to
That's
get
not
Dave a lightsaber.
bad move. Yeah, another reason you watch video. You've no idea what I'm doing right now, listener. If you're not watching video, all you hear is this sound. What is that?
Bobblehead.
Anyway.
But there's an example, and Dave became a good leader. Dave, like I said, took the effort to learn what it was to do his job, and to then begin to cultivate and grow his people, because he had direct responsibilities to still continue doing work. He wasn't just a people manager, right? I know people managers in corporate who barely do anything but manage their people, which for some of them, they have teams of 10 and 20 people. That is a hard job to do, right? So they're not actually coding. They're not actually, they're not actually doing something. They're just managing people. Dave was managing his people, managing his people's people, because he had like student tutors and all this other stuff. And he was doing his work. He learned how to become a good leader by being authentic, by being engaging, by being present, by having worked up too, right? He started the barista, then he did this, and he did mentoring, then he worked his way up before he was ever the director of the entire center. And he had done work in each of the different aspects of the center too. He knew what it took to deliver the service they were required to deliver. To me, I'm using this as a good example of a leader because I believe that's someone who takes the effort to be transparent, to be authentic, to be present, to get in the shoes, the seat of the people who are doing the work that he's leading. And he's ready to admit when he's wrong. He's ready to try something new. He's ready to change something. Like Dave was a leader who, if he ever listens to this, he's just going to be like, shut up, Will. No, it's not true. But like, I worked for him for a time. And he cared. He took it very seriously, and he helped me improve my practice. And I was a student tutor. I was that many layers removed from him.
Yeah, I think that's
seriously.
I think it's a good example. I mean, my experience. I worked with Dave too, and my experience was similar. Right? Is that I always knew at the end of the day, Dave cared. I knew that he knew what he was talking about because he had put in the work to try to find it out, and he was definitely somebody I could see would default to people who knew more in certain areas. He was never willing. He never came off as a person who felt like he thought he knew everything about everybody's stuff, like, and that I think is a core piece. I think you're picking out some stuff here, right? It's and some of this stuff isn't going to be new, right? Like being a consistent learner, even in leadership, right? Like that makes a really good leader, somebody who's willing to admit where they don't know certain things, or blind spots, or even admit that they have them, even if they don't know what they are, and be inquisitive and willing to learn why and how people do what they do, and not come in thinking that you know everything already because you're in the leadership position.
Right.
That I think is a big deal, right? And I want to get right at a core of something I think you're bringing up a little bit to the side, right? I've seen this posted before on Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it now. It's fine, Twitter. I'll call it Facebook. So, just joking.
You mean Meta? Meta's Facebook?
It's not that bad. So MySpace. No, okay, I'm done now. That's enough jokes. So I was on Twitter. Somebody had posted basically saying you can't give advice on or lead in teaching if you're not actively a teacher in the classroom. And a bunch of likes, bunch of reposts, bunch of great stuff. There's a little part of me that pushes back against that to a certain extent, and I see this criticism happen to leadership in my area, where because you're not in the classroom actively, you can't lead those who are. And first of all, I actually disagree with that statement, mainly because that's impossible. Like most of these people who are leading these giant institutions or they can't be in the classroom. Like that's absurd. That they have another job. They actually, while we sometimes might think they don't, they do. Okay, they have jobs. They're doing stuff. It's that's not a fair assessment.
Right.
The reason I think that assessment gets thrown around is because you have this classic character, okay? Let's call him Anakin, okay? So Anakin...
Love it. I'm with you.
Anakin comes in, okay? And
he does not have the high ground.
He does not have the high ground. Yeah, I don't know. There might not be quite as close of tie-ins, just a heads up. You know, Anakin was the first thing that popped into my head. Anakin comes in, and Anakin drops in with what I like to call the savior complex, okay? Anakin drops into the leadership position thinking they know everything about everyone else's jobs, and they're going to save the organization, the institution, or the school, and then they start implementing things like nobody's business. They might take 6 months to learn the environment, but really all that is them waiting and planning to figure out how they're going to release things. I'm not bitter about this at all. And
this has never happened to Josh, people. This is a hypothetical, theoretical, but potential idea.
They come in with this idea.
Happened.
And those are the people who give the people who don't have as much teaching experience and leadership a bad name. And I think that's the issue that people will point to is, well, they don't have enough teaching experience. They don't know what's in the classroom. So they can't lead. The problem is, yes, you're right. They don't have some of those things, but if they were more willing to listen to others and learn and build good teams around them and those experiences, right, they might be better at leading in those areas. There's plenty of examples of incredible leaders who didn't actually do the work of the people that they were leading, who had ways of leading without needing that, right? So I don't think that's absolutely a minimum requirement.
Like Ted Lasso, for instance, you know, he's a fantastic example of someone.
You can say it's a fantastic example, right?
He comes into an institution, a situation, knows nothing about anything, and still
knows nothing about anything. And like, if only some podcast out there was doing a series on how that connects to education, that would be really cool.
Episode 126, folks. That starts episode 126. Coming up
soon in 3 episodes. High Tech Podcast drops our Ted Lasso Goes to College series. Woo woo! I don't know if we've actually talked about it yet. If we have,
by the way, we're doing that.
By the way, we're doing that in 3 episodes. Anyway, but to go to that, like, here's a good example. We'll get to this later in that series, and we'll talk about it more. But like, just give you a preview of how we're going to talk about this stuff. Like, Ted's a great example of this, as somebody who leads well because he comes in not assuming he has all the answers. He gets to know people. He learns how they do things. He gives opportunities for people to speak up and take ownership of things. All he does is help them come together to do that.
Right.
And find ways to be that.
And does the leadership thing. Like, one of the things that we're begging is, what's a good educational leader? And so we kind of started with, and we got on this track of like, well, do they or don't they have to have educational experience or classroom experience, or do they need to be actively teaching? No. First and foremost, they need this good leadership. You know, to be a good soccer leader, to be a good educational leader, to be a good video game leader, it's all about being a good leader. First and foremost, and the example you're getting into there of a hypothetical, theoretical, never possibly happened idea situation you've not experienced in real life. The thing that's happening there is the person wasn't, maybe they did or didn't have good educational background. They just weren't a good leader. And I've experienced that in my different institutions as well. Like, I've met leaders where it's like, oh yeah, you have the title, you are the authority. Maybe I have to ask you the question and get the answer from you. But you're not a leader. Like, you're not good at this. And the things that we see that are good in it are the people skills, the engagement, the ability. Sometimes I do believe a good leader doesn't even have to be a good project manager. A good leader who's not a good project manager knows to bring in the project manager.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right?
Finds one that can do it. Yeah.
I regret doing this. I already regret the idea. I believe generally I'm a pretty good leader. I do not believe I'm a good project manager. I believe Josh is a good leader. I also believe Josh is a good project manager. If I'm going to get the two of us involved in something, I'm going to do leadership. He's going to do leadership. But when the time comes, I'm going to hand him project management.
Yes.
Ever so graciously, and because I can recognize that's not my skill as a leader. I know where my skills are and I capitalize on those. I know where Josh's are and I try and lift his up and encourage him to use them. Like, that's what a leader should be doing. And so we're in our space. But if I was the president of a university, if I was the president of a local small private college tomorrow, like, I would not be trying to take over and do all these things. I'd be trying to find the people in the business who are doing the things that are good and get them to do them more, get them to do them better, try and point them towards the right thing. That's the leadership that I think all of us want to see, whether it's a curriculum leader, a program coordinator, a department chair, the president of the college, right?
100%. I'm also going to throw it in there, and for side note, folks, the Will's hyping up my project management stuff. The skills at trying to tell people the some of the people skills in my leadership, I have that, but not at the same level Will does. Okay, so if we're going to toot other people's horns, like anything that needs to involve, networking and getting the right people into the mix and all of those things, that is the Will Illingworth way, and I would absolutely hand that over. So, like, these are pieces of where, like, and Will and I are still learning on how to do all of this, right? We're not going to use ourselves as exemplars because there's a lot of stuff we could be working through as we're even experiencing right now in life, improvements that we can make about how we do all of this, right? So, like, there's plenty of things. I would get into one other thing. I think a good educational leader or admin, right? So we're getting into some stuff, right? They're continual learners. They're I think one of the things you're identifying, Will, is that they're identifying people's strengths and letting them take ownership of those and leverage them as a leader, right? A good leader sees that, okay, this teacher's good at this teacher's really doing this well in their classroom. Let's not just like say that that's good. Let's actually like elevate that and help other people see it, and not force that way of teaching onto other people, but empower that person to share and train and stuff. Like, so there's a good example of like where they could do that. One of the other things that I think that is often missed is two things I want to get at. One, whatever leadership you're going to be in has a clear focus and is able to prioritize. Like, you don't have to be good at project management to know how to prioritize things and what's most important and what isn't. Right? And helping your institution, your school, see that priority and why. And you're able to cast that vision for why that's the priority. Right? I see this too often in leaders that are out there in their areas. They don't prioritize and focus on the one thing they want to do. They instead unleash this giant wave of multiple things. The amount of times I've heard you're gonna kill people doing that, right? And so I think that's another big piece. I said I had two, but I have three now. It's giving me a third one. So just let me run on the soapbox for a second, my friend. Okay, roll. They put people first, always. Here's the deal. We've seen it happen. We're not going to call it our own spaces, so we'll call it other spaces. We've seen this happen in tech world, education world, left and right. People being just discarded like they're nothing from their current jobs. Okay? And we have seen good ways to do this and bad ways to do this, right? So like I feel this when I say people first always. I already hear the other leaders who might like get annoyed at that statement and being like, I hear what you're saying, never fire people, never. No, that's not what I'm saying. There are real reasons to do that as an organization to make those decisions. There's ways to do that put them before the bottom line and put them before those areas, right? Like a good example of this, right? Let's go out of education for a second. Let's go to Zoom. Now, I don't know as much about everything about Zoom, so if Zoom has done other bad stuff, give me a break. Okay. But I want to tell this one story, right? It was floating around for a while, right? I don't remember the exact numbers, but like Zoom's leadership before they let people go, like took massive cuts at their own leadership and management area. Like the CEO took giant cuts. And then when they let people go, they had a pretty decent like plan and system for letting people go that like took care of them in the process. Like that matters, right? Yep. And we should be better at that in education and what we're doing. Too often I see the mission of the school or the mission of whatever you're doing be touted as this big thing that is more important than the people who are there. But leaders, we have to remember your mission doesn't happen without those people. So
Preach.
those people need to be prioritized. And in my opinion, a good leader prioritizes the personhood of the people that are working for them and their students over their own strategy and system. And if we're not willing to do that, then it's time to get out of the leadership chair and go somewhere else, because that's what we need to do.
I'm aware of like Stitch Fix, right? It's a large company that does the boxed styling. You know, like you buy a box and it's clothes that comes.
They're always advertising to me on YouTube, right in between when I'm watching D&D videos.
You need to show yourself some YouTube Premium, bro. Ad-free life.
Yeah, well, we got Spotify.
I have YouTube Music and YouTube Meet Premium and all that's one subscription. It's really cheap, so it's fine. This is hashtag not a sponsor. I don't know why we're debating.
If it was, we should definitely be talking up Spotify since we're on Anchor or Spotify for podcasters. Okay, whatever. It's fine. Continue. Sorry, Stitch Fix.
Stitch Fix.
Clothes.
Well done, Jinx. They had a CEO founder, and the CEO founder left, and they brought a new CEO, and that new CEO came in and tried to rip tear and change things. I don't know the whole story, but I've got some good insights.
You're saying he came into Stitch Fix and tried to rip tear?
Oh, wow. Yeah, well done. Good pick. Good pick.
Yeah. Must have not been great stitches.
Oh, gosh. Well, keep going. If I go, then you'll stop. No, I'm joking. It went so poorly, they brought the original CEO back to put things back right. And I don't know, did it go as well? Did it fix everything or not? But like the point was being made there that this new CEO did not have the culture of the company, did not have the mission of the company, and was changing too much and negatively impacting the company's viability. And that's just one that comes to mind. But you just think of and you see all these companies today that are losing and changing and rewriting and like Rite Aid. Rite Aid's another company. It went through 3 CEOs in like a year's time. It's just crazy. This upwards leadership loses perspective of what they can deliver. And the person, like the board of directors, the only choice they have is change the person. We need somebody who's going to not only keep the business in mind, but keep the people in mind. And that's not easy. I also don't envy those leaders who are trying to make these decisions and deal with this.
Yeah, I don't think it's easy, and I think people can be overly critical of, like, I've heard people make comments about leaders that I've seen do this, and I think you also need to remember they do need to care and make sure that the school financially or institution financially is going to succeed. And those are not easy decisions to make by any means. It's the way it's done and how it's done, and the decisions that lead up to that matter. Like, as a leader, I think you always have to be asking yourself the question, like, what's my decision going to mean for the people in those classrooms and for the students at the school? It may get you closer to whatever vision you have, but does your vision involve the people that are there with you right now? And I don't have a lot of patience for these leaders who basically say, get on the bus or get under the bus. Because my response is, I don't think you should be driving the bus then. I can go get a self-driving bus. How about you get out of here? Get going. That's not how you lead. That's how you dictate.
Completely agree with. Oh my gosh. One of the things that I think is really cool though about this opportunity then is, like, as we're trying to wrestle with what we think a good leader is and what we see that to be in education, like we're pulling a lot of different threads here and trying to pull it together. What I hope you listener can take away from this is then what to do, what to emulate to become a leader, right? I personally have struggled with this. I have wanted to be a people manager. I have wanted to be a director. I have had these grand ideas of like what I could do if I was the leader kind of thing. And nothing's worked out for me to get that kind of position. I believe I'm using the good people skills. I'm making their good relationships. I'm very respectful. I'm good and knowledgeable, and I've got expert knowledge in my space. Right? But I haven't, and this isn't I'm going to stop on me here. Just, it's not about me, but like, it's not something that just falls into place. Like, I don't think we can just emulate good leadership and become the best leader. I think there's something that we do need to make sure we have as good leaders, as good budding leaders, to go and try. You do need some initiative. You do need the ability to stand up, raise your hand, and say, I'll do it. I'll take the lead here. I will try. Like, I think there's a lot of good folks I've met in my career so far who could be good leaders, but don't take that initiative. Be like, well, why don't I do this project? Why don't I take the lead? Why,
Oh
there's
yeah.
also this wrestling match of us all accepting the status quo of authority. Well, my boss said I can't. Well, who's your boss's boss? Go ask them. Who's like,
Well, be careful about that. That doesn't always go well. Depending.
okay.
To be
This is
crafty.
not legal advice. Please don't sue us when you
Crafty.
lose your job for doing what I suggest. But it's like I just feel like there's this status quo in education, especially like if you're not the person with the highest degree in the room, you don't matter.
Oh yeah.
And go get a higher degree and put that person out of business. Like, bad leaders need to be supplanted by good leaders, and it's up to us as good leaders, good wannabe leaders, to take the initiative. We have to try. We have to get either the
Yeah.
degrees, get the experience, change jobs, whatever it is. When you're a good leader, if you have that skill and you have that passion, try. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I would
I feel
agree.
like in my career, I've never gotten these titles, but I continue to find spaces where like people still come to me because they know I'll get it done. There's that kind of leadership that I get to express and work with my cross-functional stakeholders. I have people across my business who come to me because they know they'll get it done. None of us have a direct report relationship. None of us have a dependency. Like, in some ways, I really should say no. Like, to a business sense, there's a lot of things I should say no to, but I just say yes because I know I can do it. And I think that's my best effort at being a leader I can be in the space I have.
Yeah, you don't need to be in the position to lead, right? I mean, we're talking about this in like what makes a good leader and / admin in those areas, but you don't have to be in those positions to lead. All the stuff we're talking about right now, you can do in whatever position you're in. Now, you may have less decision power about certain things, but you do have power in how you step up when things are needed. Like, ironically, the episode after this, we'll talk about Steve Miletto. He's in a leadership position, and he basically got there by just being the person to say, I'll try doing that. I mean, that's basically Steve's philosophy.
Yeah.
And it got him there, right? And I think Steve's a good leader in those components because he's willing to help people, and he does care about the people. You talk to Steve, it's very clear. Now, we don't work with Steve, so who knows. I'm just messing with you, Steve. It comes off of.
He is a Braves fan, so
It's true. I don't,
Really.
sports ball. It's yeah. But that's an area in there, right? I think you can lead from whatever position you're in. I mean, the situations I've been in, that I just did the same thing Will said. You were willing to try things. You're willing to do stuff. And sometimes it's just the right scenarios get you into those positions. But whatever situation you're in, you are leading. If you're a teacher, you're leading students, you're doing that. These are all places that you could be implementing and doing these things. I think it just comes down to being willing to keep learning and caring about the people that you're leading or that you're with, and having a clear direction that you want to go, right? And having that focus. You can have that in whatever situation you're in. Whether you're a leader who's actually an admin leader in education, or you're just teaching, that you can have all of those things and end up leading students and people to really great places, and eventually, hopefully, like Will said, that works out. Or you know what, you leave and you do your own thing and you leave. There's something totally okay with that. The reality is we need better leaders in education in all these situations, who care less about their wonderful opinions and care more about a better vision for tomorrow and bringing people along with them and caring about that. Like, at the end of the day, that's what I think makes good leaders, and empower people to be a part of that. Anybody who I've had who has been a good leader in my situation in my life has been that, where they have a picture of what they want to do, and they've brought me along on that journey, and they've empowered me to do stuff on that journey and leveraged me for what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. The leaders I've worked for have known what they probably shouldn't ask Josh to do, and what they should, right? There's good pieces. So that's, I think, what
and-
makes it.
We just had Jonathan Lebov on for episode 121 about antimatter. I really liked how he put it. Right, I don't have the exact words coming to me, but like when we asked him, like, why'd you start, memes for education? Why'd you start antimatter? And he's like, we didn't start this. He's like, we had to do this. Like there's kind of this like mission driven.
He said attitude. Basically, I remember listening to this the other day. It was basically like the line of, "We didn't invent antimatter, we just found it." Like, and we had to do it. It was basically what he said. It was this idea that like he just found this thing that needed to happen, and he found a way to help people get there. And like
that attitude is that leader. Like that's a leader that I gravitate towards. Like, you know what? Let's do it. We have found the option, and more people need it. I gravitate towards that. I think that's a good demonstration. And the difference on those kinds of folks, the people with the charisma, the people that pull you in, the people that have the vision, is can they execute? Can they execute? Can they keep the people involved? Can they keep the relationships good? Can they deliver? Right? Like you have those leaders who have the gravitas, the charisma, the mission, and then they can execute. Boom. They can't execute. That's what happens. These are the breakdowns where they become too much about their ego. They become too much about their opinions. They become too much about one system. Like, oh no, we just got to fix this system, and that'll have the ripple effect on everything else. It's like you do have to have a macro approach here. You're the leader.
Yeah,
you have the biggest picture.
If I could add in one other little tidbit too, I think if you're going to be a good leader or admin in your area, have people around you who don't always agree with you, and keep them. Like, do all these things are great, but then also combining it with keeping people around you who don't always agree with you, and quite frankly, probably disagree with you more often than not. This is a hard thing for me, and I think for anybody. Like, we don't like being disagreed with, or people who come from different perspectives. But too often, I see leaders fall into this trap of like getting rid of the people who are, not on board, quote unquote, and all they're really doing is keeping around all the voices that sound like them, and that doesn't create a good environment.
In the wise words of Jason Sudeikis playing Ted Lasso, quoting Walt Whitman, who may or may not have actually said it, be curious, not judgmental. It's this attitude of like, if you have that curiosity, the learning and growth mindset that we often talk about in education, right? If you have that, different opinions aren't going to challenge your ego. That's what happens. Like a different opinion, like Josh and I have had different opinions. We don't let it get to our egos. It's like, oh, no, I hear you, Josh. Okay, let me think it through this way then, or no, you're right. Like there's an opportunity for negotiation, for massaging the middle, or for accepting the other person. And we can only do that if we have that curiosity, if we give that attitude, if we bring that attitude to it. And we all know the leaders who don't have that. So that's a tough one. But anyway, go ahead.
Nope. Go into your next thing, man.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your assist on this episode, Josh, because it's frankly
we were about to do the same thing. Look at
that. Been a great conversation.
Yeah.
You and I have actually. We're probably thinking of some of the same leaders, right? Josh is working where I once worked. There's tons of there are threads woven throughout this episode, but with the conversation about what we think good leadership should be behind us, we want to talk now about ID Assist, new tool in the education space. It's something Josh has used, Josh's team's used. I'm actually preparing a big project to use ID Assist, but I haven't yet used it, so I'm gonna wonderfully just use my little assist segue to throw it over to Josh. You're up, buddy.
Oh, look at that. Nice. Oh, thank you. I haven't used it at all. No, I'm just joking. That would have been a great transition. No.
Well, and we're done here on episode 124.
Exactly. ID Assist came across to us when we were doing the Opening AI series this past year. And I don't really remember how we got there. Did you? Oh, you know what? No. I remember how we got there. It came across PedagoMe. Right? Didn't it show up in PedagoMe? IDs were talking about it.
Or I don't remember the origin. I thought you found it.
No, it came from one of your networks.
That sounds right.
What is classic in the High Tech Podcast? A tool comes from like Will's network. Will plays with it, and then like you move on to your network, and I'm like, this seems cool, and I like overly play with it, like.
Yes. I bring things in and then I funnel them out. It's like, oh, this is cool. You should talk to that. Hey, this person's awesome. You should meet them.
Yeah, like the one person who showed me Notion for the first time never would have imagined what would happen. So ID Assist is a similar way. So Will showed this to me, and I showed it to our team. Our team was talking about AI a lot at that moment. We still are, and we haven't actually. I want to clarify, we haven't actually implemented it yet, okay. But there was some conversation about doing it. So what ID Assist is a Chrome extension tool that can tie into your Google Docs, and you can use it from the extension as well. But its main use is really useful if you tie it into like Google Docs in the Google ecosystem. But what it allows you to do is essentially it uses the AI tools that we've talked about in our opening AI series. If you want to go check that out, you can go to our website. We have an opening AI series where we talk about some of the more core stuff that happens with AI. But they essentially leverage that, and on top of it, kind of put this interesting system for using basically Bloom's taxonomy and prompts to kind of build a ID system that uses the AI to help you generate content using AI. So as we've talked about in our AI series, and we talk about now, generating anything with AI, for now, still depends on being able to write decent prompts. I say for now because I believe eventually that will stop being an issue, just like back in the day in Google, you had to know how to write into Google to get answers from Google, and now you can be my grandmother and find an answer from Google. So I think eventually you'll get to there with AI, but for now
we
need
love
some
you,
prompting.
Josh's grandmom. We love you.
Yes, exactly. She's definitely not listening to this podcast. But the
just Google better. She might find it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll show it. So what it does is puts on top of that. So you can put in information, right? So you can put in a whole bunch of content, and then you can ask it to generate things based on that, right? So the most practical example of what I've used ID Assist to do is putting content in, and then I can actually get it to generate sets of questions. Leveraging some Bloom's taxonomy components to kind of give it some guidance on what types of questions and things that I want. That's a very practical example of the way ID Assist can be used. But it's not just that. You can have it generate lessons. You can have it generate plans. You can have it generate descriptions for things. You can even have it outline. One of our IDs played with this idea of taking learning outcomes and putting it into ID Assist and having ID Assist create a broad outline for a course based on that.
Cool.
And one of the ways our IDs were thinking about using it is you could leverage this tool to throw in outcomes, get a starting outline, edit that, clean that up a bit, and then bring that into a meeting with a faculty member when we're planning out online courses and things like that. That's something an ID might do on their own, but it would take a lot more time to come up with the outline from scratch. And so they're able to cut out some time with ID Assist, giving a general outline, and then they'll go in and clean that up and kind of put their human touch on it. That makes sense, right? And then they bring that to the expert on the content, and the expert on the content can help clarify that. So it's not that ID Assist is going to do all the work for you, but it's a good starting place. Like generating quiz questions, like we said, is a good example of this. They take forever to create. I hate creating quiz questions. So what's cool about ID Assist is they can get you started on generating a bunch of questions, and then you review them, make sure they're accurate. Like you can even tell it to generate the quiz questions, the answers, and feedback along with the answers. So you can put in that feedback. Like that stuff takes a lot of time, and having a place with like ID Assist to get you started is a really cool way to do that. It's an interesting tool for doing that. Again, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect silver bullet for things or anything like that. I'm not necessarily proposing it should replace instructional designers and teachers. Like, it's a tool to help come along and assist them. That's why I like the name of it, ID Assist. It's seen as an assisting tool. So that's kind of been my experience.
Or ID 1-for-1. What I'm preparing to use it for is like what you were talking about. Like I've got a whole project set up where my designers will be pulling together the narrative, pulling together the scripts, pulling together the content, pulling objectives. Like my designers are doing all that side of things. I'm going to be the developer. None of us want to write the quiz questions. None of us have the time to write the quiz questions. So I'm going to work with it to feed as much of the narrative content into it and then get it to generate questions for me. We will then review them, blah, 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 right? You have to do that kind of step. But imagine if it could take you 10 minutes to write a question, 15, 20 minutes to write a question. I mean, I know I've sat there and labored over a quiz question before. Some of us could maybe write them in a minute. That's fine. But if it takes you 10 minutes a question and we want to do 20 questions, our team wants to per module, and we've got 10 or 20 modules, 10 minutes a question, 200 minutes. times a module, we're talking 1,000, 1,500, 1,600, 2,000 minutes. I mean, like, I'm trying to think through how many modules we have and stuff. It's just all these minutes you get to save by saying, here, make this. And now I can review each question for 30 seconds a minute and change grammar, or, okay, if this question's bad, just scrap it, like whatever it is, right? But that whole approach is much more time efficient for something like this, where we need to create altogether, I don't even know, it's like 400, 500 quiz questions.
Yeah.
You got to do it. It's like, you can't not try the AI thing where you spit it out in seconds, as opposed to taking hours to make the content.
Yeah, exactly. A couple other things it does too. We're focusing on the assessments and stuff, but it will also do like summary writing for you. So like in our context, what's super helpful, we'll write out entire weeks for courses and things like that, and then we need to come up with like a weekly summary that goes on like an orientation page that students click into. That's like a small thing that like our faculty are going to hate me for commenting on this. The people like labor over way too long. Like it has to be like perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, and like AI could help you get a good start on that. Yep. Another thing that will actually help you do is they claim it'll also help you can write like voiceover and scenario scripts using this. So having content and then having it kind of labor out a scenario script based on what you want. The key that I really like about ID Assist, where I've had to write like really detailed prompts for other stuff, ID Assist I don't really have to, because they have kind of preset selecting options that you can use.
Yeah.
And then they clearly have on the back end built in kind of this Bloom's taxonomy based script prompt writing. That kind of fits into there. Like it kind of does its own work based on what you select in the tool. So it's super cool. And like I said, it digs right into Google Docs itself. So you can put all that information into Google Docs and then use ID Assist to generate any of that content. And for right now, it's free. They're a small tool. They're trying to do what they're doing. I say for now because you just never know. But they're free for now, so you can check it out and leverage it. All you need to do is basically download the extension and it'll attach onto your Google Docs system, and you can just start leveraging it and playing around with it to use it.
I love it, dude.
Yeah, I love it. Exactly. So
I'm going to dig in. We're going to try it out, get in there, start using it. They do offer some like paid trainings and stuff like that. So there's options there. We have been in contact with their founder. Hopefully
we were talking to them on LinkedIn, right?
There's a time zone issue. They are on the other side of the world. So we hope to have ID Assist on the podcast to just talk it through in even more detail.
Yeah. If you're listening to this episode, ID Assist, because I don't remember your name. I'm sorry. I know you're a real person with a real name, but for right now, you're just ID Assist. If you're listening to this, Sandeep, if you're listening to this, come on, man. We want you on. Come join the High Tech Podcast. We'll figure it out. Will record you at 5 a.m. I won't be there, but he'll do it. I'm just joking.
Thanks.
Yeah, I figured that was a helpful comment. No, I'm just joking. They're super cool tool. Check them out. You can find them out at id-assist.co. It's important to know that. We will put that on our website, because if you Google ID Assist, you also get this anti-theft tool that shows up first. That's not what we're talking about. So you id-assist.co. You can find out more information there. Check out their course content. You can check out their stuff that they do. There's a huge button that you click on to install it into your Google Doc, and it starts from there. It's super easy and cool. You can check it out. We will give that information on the website when you are trying the tool. So that's ID Assist. Let it assist you. It'll be great. I promise.
Boom.
Nailed it. That's why people should pay us for marketing, clearly.
Any of you.
Yeah, any of you. Okay, cool. So what is next on the High Tech Podcast? That is a fabulous question that we have not answered yet. That's for sure. No, we already talked about this at the beginning of the episode. Steve Miletto, the great Steve Miletto from Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, the podcast, with a name that is super fun, and you will find out in the next episode why it's named that way. Steve is joining us next episode 124, to talk about his experience in education, to talk about his years of experience doing things, to talk about sports and bust on Will that ended up backfiring for him. Sorry, buddy. And talk about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this conversation. You do not want to miss this. And if you want a solid podcast voice, you need to come listen to this episode 124, because Steve's voice is way better for podcasting. We talk about this on the podcast, but here's the deal. Okay, in podcasting world, Steve is like a veteran, and we're like babies who just crawled out of the podcast cradle.
He has
Okay?
600 episodes.
He has
folks.
600 episodes. 600 episodes of knowledge and fun and things to share, and he shares 10% of it in this episode, and you will love it. And I'm sure Steve will be back on the podcast as a fellow EDU Podcast Network alum. We didn't leave yet. Member? Group? Host. There we go. So that's episode 124 next week. Do not miss it. Again, a reminder, you can find us on Twitter and YouTube at High Tech Podcast is our handle. You can email us inbox at hightechpod.us if you want to hit us up. You want to talk to us. Robin, I'd like to just jump on now and mention I forgot to talk to you about this beforehand. Robin, you can email us all you would like. It is totally fine. I know Will tried to box you out, but it's totally cool if you're listening to this episode.
She emailed me today.
Yeah, she emailed you.
Just because I can't.
For those of you who don't know, on episode 119, I think we joked Robin has been on the podcast before. If you don't know Robin, go check out our website. You can find a bunch of her episodes there. She's a good friend, coworker of mine. And I guess on episode 119, we said something about emailing us, and Will said Robin wasn't allowed to. So she proceeded to email Will today to make sure that he knew. So anyway, you can hit us up at inbox at hightechpod.us. If you're interested in being on the podcast, this is a great way to contact us. We have a form and a system for doing that, but the great initial contact is you can email us or hit us up on Twitter. We'd love to talk to you. Also, check out our website, hightechpod.us. This is where we put all of the episode pages. For this episode page, if you are interested in ID Assist, there will be links to it that you can get access to it, so you can go check it out. So check that out on our website. Again, thank you for joining us as another week as we continue to learn what it looks like to harness technology to lead in the classroom or online or in person or somewhere or whatever you want to do. See ya.
See ya.